11-5, and we are on dividing polynomials. There are, again, two main ideas for this section. You have the first, which is dividing by a monomial, and then a second, which is dividing by a binomial. Okay, and they are both from Standard 10.0. Okay, we're going to start off with dividing by a monomial. Okay, so the goal in dividing by a monomial is to just separate each term and divide each term by the denominator. And then you would go about simplifying it. Okay, so I'm going to show you two examples. The very first, again, we said we're dividing each term by our denominator. So here's our denominator. To simplify this, you would simply put 8m divided by 4, and you have 2 divided by 4. And we would simplify this. You can cancel that. So simplified, you'd have 2m plus, reducing this, 1/2. Okay? So it's very simple, very basic. Okay, let's try number 2. You have 5x squared divided by 10x minus 30x divided by 10x. Okay, simplifying this, what would you get? You'd have x, and that's simplified, and 2 in the denominator, minus, that goes in, 3. So here we would have x over 2 divided by 3. So it's very basic. Okay, I'd like for you to try this example. Now you would set this up just like you would a regular fraction. And then you would divide by each term. Okay. If you did this correctly, you should have as an answer 1/5 n plus 2 plus 12 over 5n. Okay, make sure you show your work and double check your answer. Okay, so the second step is dividing by a binomial. Okay, so dividing a binomial is it's another way to simplify a division problem. Okay, you can use factoring or you can use long division. And just to remind you of how to do this, we're gonna jog our memory. We're gonna go back to a very simple problem. You have 120 divided by 4. If you were to use factoring, we would factor out a GCF. Okay, so you could write this as 4 times 30 and over 4. So you have a common GCF, and that would simplify to just 30. Okay, so what you did here is you factor out a GCF. Another way that you can look at this is as a long division problem. Okay, putting the dividend in and divisor on the outside. You have 4 divided by, or 12 divided by 4. You do the division first, that's 3, and then you multiply. 3 times 4 is 12. You would subtract, and you'd bring down the 0, and you'd repeat. You divide, multiply, subtract, and bring down. Okay, DMSB. Quick way, easy way to remember this. Divide for your dad, multiply for your mom, subtract for your sister, and bring down for your brother. And then you repeat. So that's the long division family. Okay, we're going to need to remember how to do this, because what we're going to be doing next is we're going to be dividing out a polynomial by a binomial. Okay, so in this case it's a trinomial divided by a binomial. We're going to review, you know, there are 2 different ways to do this. Step 1, we can factor. Okay, if you set this up as x squared plus 3x minus 28 dividing by x plus 7, we can factor the trinomial in the top, and then we can simplify it. Okay, let's go ahead and do that first. Okay, over the bottom on the side, I'm going to use the x because this is not a PST. There are no GCFs. So negative 28 as a product, positive 3 as a sum. Looks like we're going to have a positive 7 and a negative 4 here. So what we're really looking at, instead of this, we're going to cancel that. We're substituting this with x plus 7, x minus 4. Okay, so take a look at here. We have a common factor. We have x plus 7 in the numerator and x plus 7 in the denominator. So we can cancel those out. Your answer then will be x minus 4. Okay, now we said that we're going to learn how to do this using long division. Okay, so using long division, you set this up as a regular long division problem. Okay, put your dividend inside the house. Outside you have your divisor. Okay, and I always like to put that in parentheses. Okay, make sure that what you have inside is in descending order. You do want that in descending order. So I'm just going to write a note. Descending order. Okay. So it is in descending order. You have x squared, x to the first, and then x to the 0. Okay, so what we're going to do now is exactly what we did when we divided with long division back in 3rd grade. We're going to take a look at the x. Okay, we are going to look for a factor that will make up x squared. So if you multiply x times x, you will get that x squared. You want that to match, okay? But of course, we're multiplying by a binomial, so we need to distribute. So you have to multiply the x by the 7. X times 7 is 7x, okay? This is a binomial now. We need to subtract this, okay? So when you subtract, and I would suggest that, whenever we do subtraction, you just add the opposite, okay? So some people say you can distribute that negative sign. It's the same thing, okay? So now we're going to be adding the opposite. These will cancel out, okay? 3x plus a negative 7x will give you a negative 4x. And we need to now bring down the negative 28, okay? So next up, how many times will x go into negative 4x? Or you're actually looking for a factor that you can multiply together to make that work. And it would be negative 4. Negative 4 times the x will give you a negative 4x. Negative 4 times the 7 will give you a negative 28. And in parentheses, we're going to be subtracting this. And again, don't like to subtract. We're going to add the opposite. These cancel out, and these first terms will always cancel out if you're doing it correctly. Okay? And it looks like a negative 28 plus a positive 28 will give us a 0. Once you hit 0, you can stop. Okay? So your answer here, x minus 4. Okay? Same answer. Okay? I want you to take a moment, take a look at this problem here, and you know what I'll do is I will rewrite it because it's a little bit messy. Actually, so what we're dividing by is d plus 3 there. Okay, so I do want you to try this in 2 different methods. The first with factoring and the second with long division. Okay, if you did this correctly, you would come out with d minus 5 as an answer. Okay, so if you have any questions about that, we will address that tomorrow. Okay, so we do want to move on to, there's some special notes that you need to make to keep in mind when you're dividing with long division. The first, mentioned before, is you want to make sure that everything is in descending order. The second, if there are any missing terms, for instance, if you are dividing by a 3x to the 5th plus x to the 3rd plus 1. Okay, what you want to do is you want to use a placeholder for any missing terms. Okay, descending order, yep, it's in descending order. This is really x to the 0, so that's descending order. But we're missing really x to the 4th, and we're missing x to the 2nd, and we're missing also x to the 1st. Okay, when we're talking about adding a placeholder, you're going to add a 0. Okay, so when you set this up, you need to rewrite this problem as a 3x to the 5th plus 0x to the 4th plus 0, oops, plus 1x to the 3rd plus 0x squared plus 0x plus 1. Okay, so that's what I mean by placeholders. You want to make sure that each number is lined up in its proper place. Okay, and last but not least, you're going to treat any remainders as you would in regular division. Okay, so if you have a remainder at the end, you're going to put the remainder over your divisor. Your divisor is whatever's on the outside. Okay, so we're going to try one example with all this information. Okay, example number 4. Again, take a look. Is this in descending order? You have the 3rd, you have the 1st. So it looks like what we need to add here as a placeholder is a 0m to the 2nd. Okay, so when you set up your problem, 9m to the 3rd plus 0m squared plus 5m minus 8. Okay, descending order, yes. And placeholders are in place. So 3m minus 2 on the outside. Okay, so let's take a look at our first terms now. To make this work, we need to have a 3m squared here. Because 3 times 3 will give you the 9. M squared times m will give you the m to the 3rd power. And of course we're distributing, so we also have to multiply the 3m squared by the negative 2. So negative 6m squared. Parentheses, we're going to be subtracting. And again, we're going to distribute that negative sign at the opposite. This will cancel out as it should. And 6m squared, we're going to bring down the positive 5m. And we're going to take a look again at the first terms. Okay, so we need to have a positive 2m up here. Positive 2m times 3m will match up our 6m squared. And positive 2m times negative 2 will give us minus 4m. Okay, I'm going to move this up a little bit. So we are, in parentheses, subtracting this whole binomial. So we're going to distribute that negative sign, make it an adding the opposite, canceling this out. Okay, so we have 9m now, and again I need to bring down the negative 8. Okay, and 3m and 9m, that looks like we only need to multiply by 3. 3 times 3m will give us our 9m. 3 times the negative 2 will give us a negative 6. Okay, again in parentheses, we're going to add the opposite. These will cancel out. Our remainder, it looks like, is a negative 2. Okay, since our remainder is a negative 2, here's our remainder. Okay, we're going to bring it up just like you would. You'd say minus 2 over our divisor, 3m minus 2. And that's it. Okay, why don't you try this problem here, setting it up. Remember, descending order, use placeholders, and treat your remainder as you would in regular division. Okay, If you do this correctly, your answer should be a to the third plus 6 minus 22 over a plus 2. If you have any questions, you can ask about that in class tomorrow. But your do problems, please do these 4 from your textbook. Okay.